Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to another episode of Explode, your expert biz show. And I'm here today with the one and the only John Vanek. How you doing, John?
I'm doing great, thanks, Simone.
Fantastic. Are you surviving the heat wave?
Yes, it's not too bad. We've got a slight breeze where we are, just enough to keep you going.
Lucky you, lucky you. I've got a light breeze too, which is my fan just next to me. That's that's my light breeze. Otherwise, here in central London is boiling hot.
Yeah.
But you know what? Is awesome because we can have. It feels like to me to being in Italy right now. That's what it feels like. It feels like being back home. So it's absolutely amazing. But we're not talking about the weather like good British people would do. We are here to talk about something more important, which is how you're using coaching in particular with people with mental health issues, and how that can be used in social inclusion and so on. So I'm really excited about this interview because we never talked about that. Most of the time coaching is used for, the wealthy and successful.
Yes.
And it's all about achieving success.
Yeah.
And you took coaching and gave another spin.
Yes, that's right. Well, I do coaching for mental health and social inclusion, and it's rooted in ideas, really, ideas whose time has come. And my work goes back to around about the mid-2000s, 2006. And the idea had come into the health system that people weren't just diagnosis, even if they'd been through mental health or mental hospital or whatever it was. They weren't simply diagnosis. They didn't simply need support and limited lifestyle, maybe on benefits. And the idea came that, well, maybe they have hopes, maybe they have dreams, maybe they have goals, maybe they have aspirations like everyone else. Mm-hmm. And those ideas had come over a long time, really, because you've got to go back to things like Martin Luther King and Rosa Parks, who I think is very important in this social inclusion movement. So finally, 50 years on at least from those days, we get, why not social inclusion coaching for people who have mental health conditions. And I was very lucky to be involved with an organisation that championed that approach. And that organisation was also very lucky in getting a contract in London, where I was based. So I was brought on to that. I had been previously working in things like day centres to do with mental health and that kind of thing. But I was very, very excited to be brought on board as what they called a bridge builder. It wasn't called a coach, but it is essentially coaching. It uses all the coaching tools, the wheel of life, the action plan. And I was just meeting with people who were referred through the mental health system, through the psychiatric teams, and asking them, what would you like to do? what would you like to do? We'd got a bit of background, a bit more than that, to build up a picture. And it was identifying areas that they wanted to address, just like you do as a coach, and saying, well, maybe we can link you up with those areas. And they won't be in hospital, they won't be in a day centre, it'll be wherever you want to do them. And it was doubly exciting because I was allowed to be a specialist for the arts and music, which is my huge passion, as you know. So I was talking to people, asking them questions and helping them to identify areas they wanted to access in mainstream life. And I think what you're saying about used to be coaching for, the privileged, if you like. And this idea is just, why can't it be for everybody? Everybody needs a coach. That's all it is. So my clients have gone on to do things like working in recording studio, or coming up with their own albums, or doing creative writing courses, even getting books published, doing art exhibitions, selling artwork, starting their own businesses. And this is going back, I did stop doing that because really the funding for that kind of organisation, that mental health is very subject to changes. It's subject to two things. One is change, and the other is cutting and slashing funds. So even though social inclusion coaching is very cost effective, keeps people out of hospital to a great extent, funds have been slashed even further. So I carried on with the idea freelance when I could no longer do it for an organisation. And I became a fundraiser in order to raise funds for continuing projects, often to do with making films or to do with any kind of creative thing that was involved with people in the mental health system. And I had quite a lot of, well, I've got a great deal of success as a fundraiser. I discovered I was very good at it. And now I come to the point now where that idea, which has kind of been a bit subdued over the last few years, and I knew this would happen, it's coming back up again. And when I came to Ireland, where I'm living now, I've discovered there was a life coaching course, particularly for mental health and well-being. And I thought, well, I ought to do that because there should be a professional diploma in that field. So I've done that. So I've now got my EMCC diploma, but it's not particularly teaching me anything because I've been doing it for years. But
it gives the qualification. It gives that that additional piece of paper that organization or other institution like the NHS that they can trust. I have a question for you because you mentioned that art is your background, and I know, like, you're an incredible musician. In fact, got your CD here in front of me.
That's correct.
Gold Town, guys. Gold Town, John Vanek. If you like blues, you must get this CD. Is absolutely insane. I mean, John, you had all our clients clapping and cheering and having a great time when you were playing your new tracks at our events. And so you had this your background, like you had this passion for music.
Yeah.
And then you had this big passion for coaching and for helping people. So the question is, how did you see the music and the art training fitting in with the people that are struggling with mental health issues at the moment?
Well, any number of studies have been done that the arts is very healing. It's incredibly therapeutic. The case doesn't have to be made. That case has been made. It's been scientifically tested hundreds of times. So I didn't have to make that case. But with the social inclusion coaching, it specified, because it's funded, there's money, public money, they wanted ways to monitor and to measure it. The commissioners wanted to see results. And the results are based on the mainstream areas that people are able to access. And one of them that was chosen as they call it a social domain, what areas are important to people's lives, and they identified 7 or 8 areas, and art is one of them. Faith and cultural communities is a very big area that was identified. That could be anything from going back to temple or church, or doing Tai Chi is a very broad area. The volunteering was identified as important. Education was identified as important. And employment, self-employment, and family and friends, all those. So any of those areas that people accessed, they didn't have to access them, but any ones that they did could be measured by the commissioners. So they knew there were results, so they knew the money wasn't being wasted. So if I got somebody to go to a studio and record their CD, and 6 months later they had a CD launch and a big public event, I could put down not only the mainstream venue that person accessed, I could put down the number of people who turned up for the launch, the number of people they interacted with. And this is healing. This is all healing, whether it's the arts, it's interaction with people, it's feedback, it's confidence. It could even be financial, often is. And that's what the commissioners wanted to measure, which is a whole different criteria from saying that person is managing their medication or managing to, all those things are great as well. So the arts are just part of what the commissioning bodies and the funding bodies believe to be valuable to people's lives.
And how did you get into music? Where did that come from?
My music thing is mainly through literature and language and words, because I've always been good at that. My family's good at that. Not scientific, really. And so that I love music, I love poetry, I love language, I love novels. And I loved the songwriters who could really handle language, like Leonard Cohen, people like that, Bob Dylan, Lou Reed. And through that, wanting to write poetry, I suppose, originally, discovering I wasn't very good at it, and the guitar and the keyboard came to my rescue. So don't worry, we can put your poetry across. just use this tool. It'll work, I promise. So that's it, really. And I didn't really write songs till quite late, in my late 20s. I'd been so long studying literature and being crazy about literature. So,
And have you been mainly playing blues, or did you also had adventure yourself in other kind of music?
yeah, I've done actually some sort of electronic type stuff for. There's a friend of mine called Abby Oliveira. She's worth checking out. Abby Oliveira, who's a fantastic spoken word poet, almost rap, but not quite. But she's amazing. And I put one of her poems to my own electronic kind of production. And I didn't even know my music was blues, but now that you tell me, it's that. Yes, I use a slide guitar. So,
Okay, well, it feels like blues.
yeah,
It has all the elements of a blues rhythm, and I mean that's what I see you. I see you as a blues singer songwriter. Uh, Now, going to talk about some practical things, because there might be some people that are listening right now, and they want to get into this field. They are working already with people with mental health issues, or they want to work, or maybe they want to do some volunteering in that field, because I'm sure that it's something that affects. We all know someone who's been affected by it.
yes,
I had many members of my family that, in particular in the late stages of their life, have been affected by mental health issues. If we consider depression as well as part of the mental health issue spectrum, then I've been lightly affected by it. Fortunately, not in a big way. When I was in my 20s, well, I'm still in my 20s technically. I'm still 29, but for few months, I'm holding on to my 29. But when I was around 21, 22, and so for someone who is interested in the concept, what would you consider as a starting point? Maybe you can talk about some of the things that you talk in your book. You can do it too.
yes. Well, the book. I mean, I've got a lot of difficulties with the publisher. I've got to give them another call tomorrow. It's right there. They've got everything they need to print it out and do it for me, the physical book, and I'll be putting it online as well. But it's like a handbook of social inclusion coaching. Exactly how you can use the tools like Wheel of Life, Action Plan, with case studies and downloadable forms for people to print out. It tells you exactly. Basically, anyone who's done life coaching will have used the same tools. It's just adapted more.
Okay, so the question is, how do they differ? Because the tool can be the tool, but
Yes.
then the relating to the individuals is very different. The way you would relate with someone who has mental health issues, someone who doesn't. So, or maybe it's just my assumption in this moment.
Yes.
What do you find the main difference between working with someone that has mental health issues and someone that doesn't, and in applying those tools?
Well, it's almost exactly the same. All I'm doing is asking people to identify areas they want to see some change, maybe prioritizing 3 areas, and they're contracting me as a coach to enable them to reach those areas within maybe a certain time scale in a practical way, in a smart way. So that's what you would do. Any coach would do that with any client. The slight difference there might be with people who've been through mental health or hospital or whatever it might be, is that you might be a little bit more prescriptive with the areas. Simply, well, you could ask them to say, well, do you want to identify your own areas? Just take the Wheel of Life and fill it in. Do you want to work on family? Do you want to work on employment? But if you've got more of a kind of map of it, where you've got the social domains, that's an advantage, because people might need that just to give them an idea, because they may not have been involved with mainstream life, or they've lost touch with it for a long time. And you just then identifying, well, if it's education, let's have a box that already says that, or employment, or the arts and spirituality. And then it's also a good way to leverage yourself with any kind of health commissioner, because you've got measurable areas that have been used, that have had public funding in the past, and are about getting it again now. So that would be the only difference, slightly more prescriptive tools. The other difference is that with somebody who's been through a mental health system, you may well have to act as a mentor, because if somebody says, well, I want to use the recording studio, so the next question as a coach would be, do you need any support to get to the studio? If they don't, that's fine. But then you should be willing as a coach to be a mentor and maybe go on the first occasion or whatever it might need. Very often people don't need more than just the one introduction to the area they want to access, and they'll just run with it. So that's it. You might need to be a little bit more of a mentor than you would otherwise be with normal life coaching, and maybe a tiny bit more prescriptive, just to show the commissioners that what you're funding is valuable and it can be measured. But that's it. That's absolutely it.
That's really interesting, because I never work in that field, in that area. So I remember I had a client, and I took him as a pro bono client, and I've been coaching with him for I've been coaching him for about, I think, 2 to 3 years, and I stopped recently, and I think he had some problem mental health issues, or he was in the autistic spectrum, and I wasn't used to deal
No.
with people like him. And for me at the beginning was very challenging, but it made me realize a lot of things about myself and about my communication, because I found that my communication needed to be much clearer.
Yes.
I couldn't leave any assumption on the table, and everything needed to be, as you said, prescriptive.
Yes. Yes.
And I found that to be the major difference. And the other difference is also to the appreciation that everyone, like, for something that can be very small for me, could be a huge thing
That's very
for
true.
the other person. And it was a humbling experience,
Yes.
because I think sometimes first we don't realize how lucky we are,
Oh yeah.
and how many things we take for granted.
Yes.
And I think that for me, that experience of working for so many years with that person uh, gave me much more gratitude on where I was, but also on the other hand, it made me realize that everyone is different, and also with any client I'm working with, not to make any assumption, because for what can be a small step for me can be a big step for someone else, and vice versa. It can be
Yes.
something, it can be a small step for someone, and can be a huge step for me, and it's about keeping us in check.
Yeah.
I would love to know as well, in talking about the use of music and art. What is something that, let's say, someone starts working with you, and you get a new person to work with? How would you introduce or find the perfect, like, if what kind of art specifically would
Yes.
be the best one for them?
Well, it would be whatever they wanted. So people who want to prioritize the arts, it would be very clear what art form they liked. I mean, I've had people who are accomplished painters. So we've got things where we've worked with them to put their own paintings on for exhibition and for sale. And even we've taken on one guy as a tutor, because he's so good at tutoring and showing people arts techniques, and he understood the client group very well because he'd been part of it. So I would love it to be all about my art or my music, but it's not. It's about the clients. So if they're identifying and prioritizing the arts, it's very clear very soon that it's going to be either, it could be music, it could be creative art, writing, or it could be painting. So it's all about them. And I would love it to be about me. I said, "Oh, I'll jump in, we'll do some work together, and here's my guitar." But it isn't about me. It's about bringing out what they want. When I have played with my clients, I've come down to the studio and banged away on the keyboard, and it's been great. But it's not really what I'm meant to do. I'm meant to enable them to do their thing. And the results are great. I've got a guy who does rap. He does freestyle. So you can play anything, and he'll just come up with stuff. I don't know how he does it. So it's about
Yeah.
those gifts are there in people. And if they don't do music, then maybe they need somebody who helps them to access sports or something like that, which wouldn't be my expertise, but they can find somebody who does know more about it.
If you know someone who wants to play basketball, send him
Oh
my
yeah.
way.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
Send him my way. Now, I'm curious to hear, what do you found has been your I don't want to say like or most successful experience that you had with a client, or more emotional experience. I would love to hear a story of that stuck in your mind of some of the work that you have done with someone.
Yes, I was incredibly happy when one of our clients was taken on. They call it like a peer worker. So the recovery colleges, which the NHS runs, um, they want people who've been through the same mental health challenges as the people they're working with, and they look for peers.
Yeah.
And they've asked me for references for people, and being the NHS, it's terribly detailed and terribly serious. And I know somebody's going to be great at it, no problems at all. But so I'd fill in all the form and tell them exactly what I think, and that's one thing that's very, very gratifying. And to see that person go on beyond that, to go and be a tutor, and now not even in England, has gone off to Malta.
Wow.
And we brought him in to run a group, for people with mental health conditions. And we got the use of the local room in the library so he could teach painting or just teaching art from scratch. And this is really gratifying. He got one client who came in who was actually still in hospital. He was in a secure unit. It's not like you're locked up. That's where he was. But he would cycle in every day, not every day, every week, to join that workshop, And there's so many kind of negative opinions about people with mental ill health. Things like, oh, they won't get up in the morning. No, they won't turn up. And you just have to challenge all of that and say, this is how it works in the real world. We're not going to exclude you from the opportunity to get up in the morning like everyone else has to, etc. And all of that is, it's incredibly gratifying to see it, and to see it as a kind of movement that's ongoing. It's been kind of subdued because trends have changed, and I now see it coming up again. And we're getting apparently millions and billions of pounds being. So I know that I'm riding the next wave. I can guarantee that, and I'm ready for it.
So I'm looking forward for the book to be published. I'm really looking forward for it. Now I have a question around around as well your experience that you had with working with the government. Yes. And also with public funds. What do you think can be done better? Like if you can use this opportunity as an appeal to yes. the system which is providing fundings for this kind of training, what would your appeal be?
Well, simply to understand that mainstream social inclusion coaching has already been tried and tested successfully. It's been subjected to what do they call that thing? When universities research on it, and evidence-based research. It's got qualified people doing it. They just need to do their homework and see how valuable this has been for people, and how it can keep people out of hospital, and how it's very complementary to the other approaches like therapies and counselling. It stands alongside them as a major tool, as well as therapies and counselling. Think of it in terms of just as the terms of the money being saved, if you want to see it just like that, and then the fulfilment in individuals' lives. Any funding body that wants to check that out, please do. And then from the coach's point of view, you will have to knock on doors. It's not as if you're taking this to the Ritz Hotel and J.K. Rowling says, oh, I want to get some coaching. You can do that, and those techniques will work great. But you will need to knock on doors and bring it in front of people. I'm doing that at the moment, and plenty of doors don't really open. They don't really understand it, or they're not interested. Other doors, fantastic. This is great. I know this could work for our clients. So keep the hard work up, believe in it, show them how it works, and when they start approaching their own funding bodies, then maybe the government and local authorities will take notice as well. So it's a two-way thing.
And if someone wants to connect with you, because I think right now is better. It's part of the ethos of GTeX, but together we can achieve more than by ourselves. So if everyone who is listening right now to this interview is saying, yes, I want to ride this wave with John, then where they can contact you, where they can reach out to you, John?
Well, there's the Facebook page, Vanek Life Coach, Vanek Life Coach, and of course my email. Shall I give my email over?
Absolutely. Anything you want, any contact.
Yeah, vaneklifecoach@gmail.com, and Vanek is spelled Vanek.
Brilliant. We will put all the link here in the show notes. And John, I know you also have a podcast that you started recently. Tell us a bit more about your podcast before we wrap up.
Well, I was racking my brains to think of a podcast, because I know podcasts are important and I like talking and stuff. And I thought of loads of things, really serious things about coaching and all this. And I thought, what's me? What's truly me? And I really care about the language of songs. Now, if anybody's interested, that's great. If they're not, well, that's okay too. But that's what I had to do. I love talking about songs, the language behind songs, interviewing other songwriters, maybe playing some of my own stuff, just little snippets of it. And that's authentic. Whether it's a great big world-changing thing, I have no idea, but it's an authentic thing that people are engaging with that now. And it's great to see that. And that's the Facebook group, The Language of Songs.
So, and people can also go on Anchor and find also on Anchor, on iTunes, the different the podcast, which is the Language of Song. Guys, make sure that you subscribe to that podcast. I really highly recommend it, particularly if you are in this particular niche and you like to understand the language behind songs. Then make sure that you follow John. One more question before we wrap up, John. You are one of our lifetime members, and we're doing this interview to showcase our lifetime members because they're doing incredible work here in the UK, all over the world, and we want to make sure that people get the exposure that they deserve for the incredible work that they do. So when you made the decision to become a lifetime member, what made you make the decision to join GTeX?
Well, I've attended the 3-day training, and I did the calls with you and other people as well. And my problem has always been with the internet that you get webinars, you get trainings, quite expensive ones very often, but I can't engage with this just online or webinars. And I knew that GTeX was doing so much public speaking anyway, because you do a lot yourself. And it's about public speaking, it's about meeting people, it exists in the world, and you will meet people, you'll have a family and have a community. So that sold me, that interested me highly. And from then on, it was lifetime membership. I'm going to be able to go to all this stuff. It's a bit of a no-brainer. So those two things, being able to engage with real people and have a lifetime membership, not yet another expensive program added to another
to another expensive program and another expensive program and so on. Right. Thanks for sharing, John. I really appreciate it. And guys that you're listening, if you scroll down here in the show notes, there is a link where you can apply for a call, and you will talk with one of our business coaches to see if the lifetime membership is for you and you are right fit for the lifetime membership. So then you can join this incredible community, and we can support you in exploding your expert business. John, one final thought and one final word for everyone who is listening right now.
Well, I wanted to just that little quote that I mentioned, which I put in the book: revolution is the turning of a wheel, pure and simple. And because I say the book title is "Let Me Do That Too," how mainstream coaching techniques have revolutionized mental health. Well, my idea of a revolution isn't some wow, thing that kind of transforms you overnight. It is about this turning of a wheel, bit by bit, things change, and bit by bit they change completely. And that's what revolution is to me.
And let's make a revolution. Let's make a revolution together, one step at a time.
Indeed.
So, guys, if you're listening, make sure that you join John Vanek in his cause, because definitely is something that in the public sector, in the mental health sector, even in the private sector, is going to change, because things are working but can work better. And right now we know what to do different, and we know what can be done to, in particular, help in a deeper way people, just instead of just giving them a pill and that's it. And this is what John is about. And also, we're going to put the link in the show notes when the book is going to be ready, which is going to be launched soon. So, which is called the Let Me Do That Too. Connect with John. There is the email address, which is vaneklifecoach@gmail.com. Contact John. So even if you want as well a PDF version of the book and you want to start reading it, because I highly, highly, highly recommended it. John, thank you very much for this interview. It's been a pleasure spending these 30 minutes together.
Thank you very much, Simone.
You're welcome. And thank you very much for listening, ladies and gentlemen. If you haven't subscribed yet to the show, what the heck are you waiting for? Subscribe right now and make sure you leave us a 5-star review so then we can spread the word even farther, and in particular more people can connect with these incredible people like John and the other guests that we have here on our show. So subscribe, give us a 5-star review. Until next episode, which is going to be released on Friday, then remember that together we grow exponentially. Ciao.